Today on the Wellness Grow Show, we're exploring uncharted territory in B2B wellness with Sansan Fibri, founder of Wakefully. So while most wellness companies chase consumer downloads, Sansan is pioneering something entirely different: subconscious intelligence for organizations. She's turning dreams into business intelligence, helping luxury wellness resorts deliver hyper personalized experiences and enabling HR teams to understand what employees really need before burnout hits. So, from winning innovation awards to building partnerships with AWS, Sansan is creating a new category that combines neuroscience with enterprise wellness. This is the story of how one founder is making the invisible visible and monetizable. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. Very excited for this. So, how do you explain this concept to skeptical enterprise buyers?
Yeah, this is a great question. The $1 million question. Everything we do, 95% of what we think, how we feel, and how we behave stems from the subconscious. Um, we think we're running the show up in here and that we're controlling the narrative. We say, I think, but really, thoughts is something that happens to us. It's not something that we do. It's something that happens to us like digestion, like a heartbeat. And so, what's really running the show? It's these stories that our subconscious mind has stitched together from imaginary fears, from unprocessed emotions, from unchecked beliefs. But we've been telling ourselves these stories for so long, we begin mistaking them for who we are. So at Wakefully, we decode dreams as data. And by quantifying symbolic logic, emotional patterning, identity level shift, that's how we're making this invisible, visible, trackable, transformational, and even monetizable.
Mm,
And we call it subconscious intelligence, a new metric for human potential. So
right.
we spend a third of our life sleeping. I'll take it again. We spend a third of our life sleeping and a quarter of our nights dreaming. Everybody, even if you don't remember your dreams. Dreams are the brain's native storyteller. And for the first time ever, we actually have the technology to listen. But still, in an environment that's obsessed with data and tracking and optimization, no one is tapped into this single richest source of human insight until now.
So, most wellness companies struggle to move beyond B2C, right? So, what made you realize the real opportunity was in the B2B applications?
Yeah, it was kind of a perfect storm. So I'd say three components. One is we went to market as a B2C. I raised venture capital. We went to market as B2C. And then market becomes very saturated. And without a lot of marketing dollars, it's very, very hard to grow today as a consumer application, especially in mental wellness. And so part of it was necessity, which is the mother of all innovation is necessity. The other part was realizing that we have a data moat. We, over different iterations of the application, we've grown to be the world's largest and most structured dream database with over 40,000 dreams analyzed. They're fully structured and we use semantic mapping, symbolic clustering. So we created a data set that no one else can access or can even easily replicate. And that's when we realized that while everybody else is chasing consumer behavior, what we're unlocking here is consumer belief. And belief
Mm,
is what moves behavior. It's what moves people and it's what moves markets.
wow.
So around the same time, I attended a panel where luxury hotels, luxury resorts were talking about how do we provide a more hyper-personalized, and it was something about sleep wellness and wellness tourism. You know, 1 in 5 people who plan to travel now, they plan travel around self-discovery, mental wellness. 90% are willing to pay a premium if you give them that hyper personalized, real, restful experience. But something that came up in that panel is they said, we don't know the guests until they arrive on on site because most of the booking happens by third party. Now they have to
Survey.
resort to surveys and
Yeah.
intake forms, concierge, and it becomes a guessing game. And it becomes, first of all, you're assuming that people are actually going to say what actually is ailing them, what's really going on. Second of all, you're assuming that they can even articulate what's behind general things like stress and anxiety. We all have stress and anxiety. So the guest ends up saying something generic. I came here to de stress. They're going to match him with a generic practice, a generic yoga class, or something like that. Meanwhile, we find out that this person is dreaming about drowning, being suffocated, overwhelmed. So we can match them to maybe a one-on-one transformative breathwork workshop. So now the guest is getting that hyper-personalized this. We actually personalize the experience, not to what you said, but to what you need. Wow, they really get me. And the resort gets this seamless upsell.
Yeah. And like ahead of time too, I would imagine, right? Like
And ahead of time,
when they
yes,
show
we
up,
start
you have something.
before.
Yeah. Whether it's like when they show up, there's a
So
plan
now you're
of things that,
able, and then I don't know, I don't want to step on the toes of a later question about the emotional ROI. Do you want me to wait? Because it's connected here.
no, go ahead. I'll
We
try
can
to
wait.
skip that.
Okay.
Okay. Well, so you had mentioned that neuroscience now shows dreams are neurobiological. It's like the necessary, not random. So how does this scientific foundation help you gain credibility with institutional buyers?
Well, it's true that for centuries we regarded dreams as random, mysticism, novelty. In the 21st century, with the advent of fMRI technologies, dream science has been taken from just being the domain of psychology and been taken more into the neuroscience and brain science study. And what they found out are a few things. First of all, evolutionarily, if dreams were nonsense, we would work it out of our system because in dreaming, our brain actually burns a lot of glucose, sugar, energy. So there's actually a very specific neurochemical mix that enables the phenomenon we experience as dreaming. And if this wasn't necessary for our evolution, for our brain regenerating itself, it would be worked out of our system. That's one. In REM sleep, in dream sleep, our brain purposefully shifts into a very specific, unique neurochemical state that just doesn't happen in any other state that enables
Mm.
us to process emotion, process trauma, forge new synaptic connections, cognitively rewire our brain, and be able to regenerate cognitively in a way that our waking brain just can't do.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And so that's where I don't know where I'm going with this. Ask the
That's
next
okay.
question.
Well, how about walk us through your Innovation Challenge award win? So what was it that resonated with the judges about this being?
Yeah. So understanding that the stories we tell ourselves are impacting the way we show up at work. They impact the way we show up in relationships, the way we show up in the mirror, the way we are with ourselves, and the way we are with our colleagues and with all our relationships. So, those pestering thoughts that you get mid meeting. Oh, she just scratched her nose. Oh, she looks bored. Is she judging me? Am I getting fired? All this is mental clutter. This mind clutter
Mm.
literally hijacks our focus. It drains our brain power. It slows down decision making by up to 50%. And that's leading to absenteeism. That is that leads to almost $600 billion lost in lost productivity to US companies alone every year. So let's say your company is going through a merger. This is not about peering into your employees' dreams. We never share individual dream data with our B2B clients and with the employers or the resort hotels. But what it does enable them is to understand how organizational shifts are actually impacting the emotional health of their cohort, of their employee base. So, say your company is going through a merger, and yeah, your ENPS scores and your surveys are going to show that the employees are adjusting just fine. But meanwhile, we find out that everybody is dreaming about being trapped, being voiceless, being helpless. The office is flooded. Now you're understanding that there is something here that needs to be addressed before burnout takes place, before churn takes place. And that's what they realize in the ISG Innovation Challenge is that what we can show them subconscious insight, subconscious intelligence is a new metric with which to understand. And we're talking about this was all about HR culture teams. How do you better serve your employees? Even as a leader, as an employer, they're not only serving your needs, you're there to serve them as well. And how do you meet them? How do you create that company culture if you don't even understand how major shifts at work are impacting them emotionally? Once you're able to
Sure.
understand that and to see that, you can actually address it before it festers and becomes, I'm quietly resigning.
Yeah, just try to get in front of it before they quit, right? It's like
Yep.
try to yeah, I love it. So you've developed what you call emotional ROI, right? Tracking. How does this change the conversation with potential like wellness resorts and corporate buyers?
Well, if you go back to the resort example, now we've matched the guests, so they get their hyper personalized. Maybe the resort gets that seamless upsell that their concierge didn't even need to work on. But now they want to actually see how does that one-on-one breathwork experience actually affect our guests? Again, not individuals, cohorts. So we can show them in graphs how does taking the breathwork experience, the sound bath experience for 5 days actually impact a reduction in conflict dreams, in certain stress dreams, in overwhelmed dreams? And then we can help them turn it into data driven marketing and messaging. So now a resort that's charging $1,000 a night can say, based on proof, based on data, after 6 nights at our hotel, our guests not only do they sleep better, they're dreaming better. There was a 40% reduction in stress dreams. Who else can
Mm,
say that? Who else can give
right.
you that kind of insight?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So your AWS partnership is what providing nearly 100K in back end development. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How are strategic partnerships accelerating your B2B growth?
Well, there's no question. I mean, we went to market on a consumer app on a small budget. I raised venture capital, but it wasn't a big budget. And, I built with an outsourced team. It was a very monolithic structure. So, what AWS is doing, or their development partners are doing, is breaking us down to microservices so that it is more scalable. Think about it as more of a distributed system so that we can, instead of every time, every instance, every new client needs this kind of data or needs that kind of interface, if we're white labeling some features or some of the end user facing application, now we don't have to recode the entire thing, but it's actually divided into microservices, which makes it also a lot more distributed, a lot more safe, secure, and scalable.
So you had mentioned before when we were chatting the melatonin industry example, right? The 20% of users experience nightmares. I think I actually had a nightmare after our conversation. I was like, it was like,
I'm sorry.
um, no, I just, thinking, well, I think I just was, it made me kind of look back. Am I noticing my dreams more kind of? Because I don't take
You
it
may have been
regularly, but when
noticing
I,
your dreams more. Yes.
yeah, that too. And
Don't
I
blame
just,
your nightmares
when I,
on me.
no, no, no. I was just thinking of like when I travel and would type into the whatever zone that I'm in and try to like, okay, I need to go to bed at this time so I can wake up at this time. So sometimes I take
Hmm.
the melatonin. But how do you identify these hidden market opportunities?
Well, personal experience on that one. This is years ago. I was taking melatonin. I needed something to help me sleep. I was actually like flying a lot for work and, my hours and my circadian rhythms were all off. And so I didn't want to take a medication, so I
Yeah.
got the, over the counter melatonin. And I just realized after a while, I thought, wait, I think this is giving me very vivid, unpleasant dreams. And I think it's every time I'm taking the melatonin. And so back then, today you can chat GPT it, back then you Google stuff. And so I Googled it and I found out that 20% of people who take melatonin have the side effect. That is a sizable side effect. So
Yeah.
again, necessity brings innovation. Just from personal experience, I realized that these melatonin brands, and there's a lot of new brands, and some of them are incorporating, and some of them have dual because of this reason. Some of them have different supplements, some with melatonin, some without. Again, it only affects a certain amount. So it's not every
Yeah.
person, but 20% is a big use case here. And these companies, when somebody bought the 3-month supply, the 3 bottles, and they churn, they never come back, they don't know if it's because of the nightmare thing. And that's where we come in and are able to provide them with that kind of intelligence. So it just
Mm.
was connecting the dots.
Yeah. Okay. So earlier you had mentioned you've got a huge database with over 40,000 dreams. You have a significant data moat, right? So how does this competitive advantage play into your B2B positioning?
There's no other company that has access to the type of data, subconscious data, think about it, at scale, and to the kind of structure that we put around it through, a lot of work, a lot of trial and error, a lot of growing with AI. So our systems are proprietary. I don't see another company now going to find a pipeline through which they can collect 40,000 dreams.
Yeah.
So it's just a very, very unique market positioning. We just are sitting on a serious data moat that doesn't
Yeah.
exist. So there are dream databases out there. The largest one has about 30,000 dreams, but here's the problem. Their dreams are from 25 years ago. So not relevant. And there's no context around the dreamer. They
Mm.
can maybe say gender and potentially age range. We are talking about asking our users so many questions and finding out the word associations, the different cognitive attitudes towards different symbols in dreams. That means that we have a lot more context. And actually, in a lot of those earlier computational dream analysis, dream content analysis at scale, they would all go to this one called the dreambank.net. And the self-professed limitation of a lot of these studies are that there is no context around the dreamer. So
Mm.
as we change as societies, everything affects our dreams from our personal life, whether, your parents were divorced, whether you're driving a car to work every day. I often give this example. You can dream of a dog barking and I can dream of a dog barking. Let's hypothesize and say that you were bitten by a vicious dog when you were 12 years old. I was born into a family with 2 older sisters and a Great Dane. Do you think it could possibly mean the same when we're both dreaming about a dog barking? No, there are no universal dream meanings. Your brain is that screenwriter, is that director, your brain, your experience. But then you can understand also collective shifts. So, for example, early pandemic days, globally, people were dreaming about themes of being trapped, whether it was in a fire, somebody jailing me, I'm being chased, I'm being, was the underlying theme was being trapped. Why? We were trapped at home by this crazy unknown, by this crazy virus.
Yeah.
Slightly later, so we're talking about, global shift in collective unconscious, right? In the way we associate things. A little later into the pandemic, Americans specifically, but in droves, started dreaming about bug attacks. Think about why. Because in the US, we call a virus a bug. Brits weren't
Mm.
dreaming of bug attacks. No other English speaking country was dreaming of bug attacks. Americans were. That's how you see that our collective unconscious is seeping, everything is seeping into our dreams. And so having dreams from 25, 30 years ago are not relevant to what's going on today and to the way the belief systems and the thought systems that we have today. Yes,
Sure.
humans in general are still human, and we still deal with and dream of the human predicament, right? The human condition, relationships and pain, and, of course, but there are also cultural shifts that are seeping deep inside. And so, for this data to be relevant on a business intelligence level, it has to be current and it has to be contextual. And that's what we do.
Okay. Where do you see the biggest untapped opportunities for subconscious intelligence in enterprise wellness?
So the obvious ones, obviously, we mentioned the wellness resorts. These are people who are already going there to look for something that is a mind-body connection, that is looking for that wholesome experience, that's also looking for that hyper-personalized experience. Sleep tech and wearables, the Aura Ring. We just add an additional, those biometrics and those beautiful graphs. We add an additional layer of cognitive emotional intelligence to what they're already tracking. So while they can tell you how you slept, we can tell you why and what's keeping you up.
So are you looking
Um,
to connect with these types of companies, build partnerships with them?
Yep. Coaches and therapists. This is not about making them dream experts or focusing the session around dreaming, but it's about giving the coach a snapshot of where their client has been emotionally, the emotional journey, not what they're telling you that they did at work and who said but what actually, how they interpreted the events that they've been going through. And then we actually help them focus modalities that they're already using, whether it's the internal family system, different CBT techniques, to the themes, to what your client is already going through. So just helping them get a snapshot and hyper focus the session, and being able to also track the transformation so that they can measure that ROI to their clients and say,
Yeah.
look, since you started doing this practice that I guided you on, your dreams have changed. This is what happened to you mentally. So they can actually prove that ROI.
It is so fascinating. So, as you prepare for your next funding round, what metrics are you tracking that maybe traditional B2B SaaS companies might not consider?
Emotional shifts, thematic trends, kind of an emotional score graph, in
Okay.
lack of a better term, and thematically how themes relate to times and experiences. So again, this is our cachet, this is our USP, is that we're able to track. But obviously we have to track everything that everybody else is tracking: conversion, engagement. But for us, it really comes hand in hand. Behavior comes hand in hand with subconscious intelligence, with what are the behavioral metrics, but also what are the emotional metrics, and how do they coincide?
So, from screenwriter to AI consultant to wellness tech founder, how would you say this diverse background has shaped your whole approach to this B2B side, the B2B sales?
At the core of me, everything is story,
Okay.
and that connects to everything. Earlier in my life, I started in high school. I went to an art high school and I majored in acting. I then went into screenwriting and then producing. I worked with Comedy Central with Bill Burr, Kevin Hart. To me, it was just different. Well, it was the same medium, but different positions or different ways of approaching of how you tell a story. Is it from playing the character? Is it from writing the character? Is it from producing the entire piece, the entire movie or TV show? And I've always been obsessed with my dreams. My dreams have been a great source of creativity and of self-understanding. And so I studied Jungian dream analysis, and I realized that those are the most important stories. We use story, we use filmmaking to connect. Look, I'm telling you a story now. This is the only way we know how to even connect and to understand ourselves. We have stories, again, those stories that are running in our head. The minute we become more aware of those subconscious stories, then we gain more agency. And now we have a choice. We can change the story. Maybe that story I'm telling myself about being a failure and never being good enough, once I realize it's a story, then I realize that I can also, when obviously Wakefully gives you the tool to actually change the story.
Change the
Story is
story. I
at the
love that.
core of everything that I do. And then entrepreneurship, I mean, I'm not your typical, I don't know what's a typical entrepreneur really, but I don't have any kind of business background, corporate background, finance background. I mean, spreadsheets used to give me the hives. I mean, I didn't think that I would be interested in being in a corporate or business environment until I started building one. And I realized that what is actually more creative than creating a business? I mean, I've literally created something out of nothing, out of thin air. You're building, I mean, this is the ultimate creation, I think, after baby making.
Okay, I like that.
And since I didn't do the other one, I'm doing this one.
For health and wellness founders listening who are exploring the B2B opportunities, what's your biggest piece of advice for identifying even enterprise use case studies or use cases?
Necessity is the mother of all innovation. Think of when you're in a tough spot, who else is looking for what is helping you, what you found that is already helping you? And then story. Story, story, story. People don't connect to pitches. They don't connect to metrics. They connect to story. You have a story, but there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing. There's a reason for everything. Find your passion, find the story.
Great. I love it. I love it. Okay, last question. Just tell people, tell our listeners how they can follow you, they can find you, they can connect with you, follow your journey.
So we are everywhere, social media, website, Wakefully, like wakefully.io, social media, wakefully.io. And we are live with a consumer app on both App Store. It's called Wakefully AI Dream Decoder.
Thank you so much for this.
My pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Wellness Grow Show. If today's conversation sparked something for you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the stories, strategies, and insights from the front lines of wellness innovation. If you're a founder, operator, or health leader exploring growth into institutional markets and have a story worth telling, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out directly on LinkedIn or YouTube. And if you found this valuable, share it with a peer or post it online. You never know who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay well, keep moving, and keep building what matters.